Shame is the name of the game.
I think you can tell when you have the world belief of shame because you can see people as good and bad. And so if you see bad people out in the world, you can judge people's character as being bad. And when you judge people as being bad, you can definitely judge yourself as being bad. And that's what we call shame. And I think it's important to differentiate shame from guilt, in that shame is identity of being broken or a bad person or a worthless person. And guilt is seeing actions and behaviors as bad or not productive. So people that are in a state of shame see themselves.
Becomes an identity.
Yeah, it's an identity thing. And so if you see bad people out in the world, that's a signal that you probably can see yourself as bad as well. So that's probably a good litmus test to see whether or not you believe that shame is a part of your world. Because most people that do have shame don't categorize it that way mentally. There's mental blocks and rationalizations that help them avoid feeling the shame. So it's important to open yourself up to the idea that you might be one of those people.
Yeah, we're all programmed to be that way. Really, unless you have like a very spiritual parents.
Yeah, the majority of people for sure.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Like 99% at least.
Yeah, especially if you've heard like, why can't you be like this, or you should be like that, or you start to identify as wrong. And that's a lot of people's childhood trauma that they need to go back and recategorize when you believe that there could be something wrong with you as an individual rather than something wrong with your behaviors. Working in mental health for years and years, I see like that is like the #1 cause of mental illness is
And substance abuse.
Well, substance abuse is a symptom usually of the feeling of shame.
Yeah,
it's all a coping skill to avoid that feeling, because there's no correcting it. If you believe you're fundamentally flawed, you can't correct that other than to stop believing that thing. And people have a hard time stopping believing that they're fundamentally flawed. It requires a lot of internal introspection.
There seems to be a repeat of shameful behaviors, and some of them are widely accepted and even encouraged, like gossip, where people speak about other people, but they're never like speaking too loudly, especially if the other person's there. You can hear them whispering to each other, and that kind of shameful behavior reinforces back to how you see good and evil, or how people are being bad. They gossip about how other people aren't living up to people's expectations of good behavior, and they kind of point the finger and have this holier than thou attitude towards it.
By pointing the finger at anybody and saying that they're a bad person, you're reflecting that you could also be a bad person. So framing it as shameful behavior wouldn't necessarily be healthy. You'd want to frame it as guilty behavior, or behavior that you should stop doing, but doesn't reflect on you as a person. Like you could say all people that gossip are bad people, and now you're still in that paradigm of like some people are bad and some people are good. The whole idea is to get out of the paradigm that people are bad and to get into the paradigm that behaviors are bad. Then you can start seeing people as fundamentally good or innocent, and then just having bad behaviors. Most people would classify rapists and pedophiles as evil people, and therefore not really human. And so when you start classifying things as not human, it's easy for you to just dismiss them and kill them and be discompassionate. But that paradigm of belief, it just reflects to yourself. So it's just not a good way of looking at the world. And I would say out of all the emotions, you got shame, guilt, fear, apathy, grief, desire, anger, pride, etc. Shame is the only one that really doesn't belong anywhere. There's no productive reason to feel shame. You should never feel shame. It's a delusional state of being, because nobody is fundamentally broken, and believing that is not healthy for your own psyche.
Yeah, you can't escape that paradigm until you stop believing that.
Right. Yeah. So the idea is if you see people as evil, then you could see yourself as evil, and then you could be stuck in a paradigm of shame, which you would not be able to fix because it's not like there's a behavior you can stop. You're just a bad person, and then you just have to avoid thinking that thought, and then you're set into a cascade of avoidant behaviors, which usually categorizes addiction and mental illness.
Yeah, it really sets up the consumer economy for people trying to repress those feelings and cover them up and always consuming the next thing to feel better. And like, it ties into hookup culture and people doing anything for dopamine release and to avoid, and for short periods of time, maybe in the moment, to not even feel that shame anymore.
Yeah,
Feel
you just
great.
it's avoidant behaviors.
Yeah.
It cascades into a lot of avoidant behaviors. And you can feel better briefly with retail therapy, and you can feel better briefly with sex. But that's not necessarily the same thing. A lot of people that aren't in shame use retail therapy and sex to deal with other things like fear and guilt and lack. But shame is pretty telling because, yeah, you're going to be stuck. You're going to feel stuck, and you're going to, until you re-examine that you actually believe that there's something wrong with you as a person. And yeah, so a good way to tell that is to see other people. And when you see other people as completely wrong, that's a good tell that you need to re-examine the way you see yourself.
Yeah, and if you're constantly going through self-sabotaging behaviors.
Right. Like you'll definitely sabotage yourself if you think that you aren't worthy of certain levels of, let's say, money or relationships.
Or sticking to a diet plan,
Yeah.
going to the gym,
If you just identify as someone who can't do that.
being there for your kids,
Right.
showing
yeah.
up to their games or their plays or whatever school functions, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you're not going to hold yourself accountable if you just think you're a bad dad. Oh, I'm just a bad dad. My dad was a bad dad. It's in my genes. If you
Yeah.
identify as that, you're going to hold yourself to that standard, and you're never going to be able to push yourself into the accountability and responsibility of being a good dad. So the belief structures are very important to address, and I think this is the most important thing to address. That's a very limiting, trauma-based belief. It's usually based in childhood. It's really hard for people to overcome, and almost impossible to coach someone out of, because if they truly believe that there's something wrong with them, they're not going to listen to you when you say there's not something wrong with you. In fact, a lot of people get in codependent relationships, and they find their mate, and they get attached to people that validate the feeling that there's something wrong with them. So if say they meet a partner and the partner says like, you're a real fuck up, but I will date you anyway, they would be more likely to resonate with that person and believe that person because they think that person's being honest with them rather than abusive.
It also seems like people that commit suicide are doing so because the pain of shame is what's driving that hurt.
I would say the majority of the time, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Save a lot of lives just by helping people overcome shame.
I've talked to many people that were actively suicidal, and they all said that they just can't do it, that they always try and they're not good enough. They always relate to like the sense of who they are isn't who they can be. Instead of their behaviors aren't good enough and they can't learn. They really do identify as a broken thing.
Yeah, and then it all becomes habit and reinforces it, and it's quite the pickle.
Yeah, it's a negative spiral. It'll lead into worse and worse behaviors that will just reinforce your belief that there's something wrong with you. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, just as much as having good self-talk and setting up a productive day for yourself with good routine, good habits.
Yeah, I mean, it's you think that it's bad that the mind does that because what you think about persists, and you could think that that's a horrible thing for the mind to do, but it works in a positive way as well, and it can go upwards, and what you think about amazing, like you're an amazing person, that persists, and that it goes out in the same direction. So it's a good mechanism that the brain has. It can just be turned in on itself.
Yeah, so a lot of people need some brainwashing.
Yeah, brain cleaning, for sure.
Gotta scrub.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a hard time talking to these individuals, but everybody knows somebody like that, and everybody,
A lot of people that are like that are openly dismiss themselves, belittle themselves,
Yeah.
say that they're stupid or couldn't do that. Or
You see them making a lot of self-degrading jokes. You know, it's pretty overt. If you know what to look for, you can spot it easily. Yeah, they're often not confident in themselves, apologetic.
and a lot of times protecting themselves through their ego.
Yeah, that inferiority complex presents as superiority. I'm so cool, look at me.
Yeah.
Look how tough I am, look how powerful I am, look how much money I have, look at my material possessions. Am I valuable enough now? Right, that's another symptom.
Yeah, and a lot of times pride becomes the obstacle to overcome in order to even acknowledge that my belief is wrong, and to admit wrongness is okay. That's like the first step of getting better, is like, okay, maybe I'm not thinking about this correctly. And it's humble. It takes a lot of humility to be able to say, I am wrong.
Pride is, biblically, it's said to be the worst sin because it really prevents you from hearing your internal guidance system, because you think that you have no growing to do, and therefore you stop growing. So to be humble is really important for self-development, and you can't really develop yourself if you feel like you're already amazing. If you identify as amazing, there's no growing that you can do. You can't fill a full pot. So you have to imagine yourself as not knowing, even if you're very knowledgeable about a subject. Humility is really important for growth, and you can't have growth without it. So, yeah. A lot of people that are in deep states of shame feel like they 100% know that they're not worthy, broken, and hopeless, and therefore there's nothing you can tell them about themselves to make them feel otherwise, because they're prideful in their knowledge of how broken they are. And they will say things like, you just don't get it.
Yeah, or that applies to other people, but not to me.
Right. And that's a common trope with people that are in that state of prideful shame, which is almost really hard to help people in that state. You almost have to inspire them and trick them into thinking that it's their idea to think that they're worthwhile, which is what inspiration really is. Alcoholics Anonymous talks a lot about letting go of pride. I think that's the first step, is admitting you're powerless and giving up your authority to something higher. And that is a great way of getting out of the state of prideful thinking and opening yourself up to new ideas and concepts.
I think the best news about learning about shame and realizing that it's kind of a plague, it's the real benefit is it's not permanent if you have the desire to change. And all you really need to do is have humility. That's like the key that unlocks
It seems so simple. It's just feeling that there's something you don't know is the only thing. You have to have the want to be better and feel like you don't know enough, and then you can be better. It's paradoxical in a way.
Yeah.
But it really does work. It opens you up to new concepts, and you're able to reformat, change your perspective on your old concepts, and correct yourself.
Being gentle with yourself in the beginning, it's like nurturing a kid, a baby, all over again.
Yeah, yeah. Which is really hard for people that think they're horrible people.
And it's easy to want to skip steps and be like, surely I should be able to do more than just this.
Right. Well, I mean, the first step is really just realizing that you have a delusional way of thinking about yourself and about other people. And it might be easier for you to even change the way you see other people first and then reflect that back to yourself. Like, I think people are evil. I can stop thinking people are evil. And then once I stop thinking people are innately evil, I can stop thinking that I'm innately evil. And so you can move from the idea that people should feel shameful about their identities and instead feel shameful about their behaviors and actions, and make that differentiation in other people first, and then reflect it back to you and say, oh, I shouldn't be shameful about who I am. I should be shameful about what I do, and move from the idea of shame to the idea of guilt, which is a lot better. it's an easy small step for people in that state of consciousness to make.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. And then once you have the idea of guilt, replacing the idea of shame, you can invest yourself with the idea of integrity. I can overcome guilt by saying what I mean and meaning what I say.
Yeah, and using
Easy.
the guilt as like as a buffer.
It's a barometer for like, did you say what you meant?
Yeah. If
No,
have
you
that
feel guilty,
regret,
right? So don't do that
Yeah.
next time.
100%. And it becomes easy because you just go by based on how things feel.
Right, and then you can feel it out and use the feeling of guilt as an actual alert system to alert you when you're not on the path that you should be. Almost like the little bumpers on the side of the road when you start to get off. I feel guilty. Okay, get back on the path.
Yeah,
I feel guilty.
behavior.
Back on the path. And then that happens so often that you get really good at driving and you never hit those bumpers anymore. Just
Right.
like driving.
Like you start to set wake-up times and you don't go to them. Don't wake up. You tell people you're going to hang out with them and you don't meet up with them. And then you slowly get to the point where you quit promising and saying things that you're not going to,
Right.
that you plan on not doing anyways.
Everybody knows some non-integrous people. They say they'll meet up and then they flake.
Yep.
And so if they felt guilty and they were trying to improve themselves, they would feel bad about flaking and then not want to do that again next time. And that would automatically course correct them.
Yeah. Which
Yeah.
is either not promising to meet up or meeting up.
Right. Conversely, people in shame would just be like, well, I'm a piece of shit, so of course I'm not going to do what I say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So, and it's all in the mind. It's all in the mind.
Well, you could say everything's in the mind, or nothing is.
And we all have the ability to get better. And sometimes the more intelligent somebody is, the harder time they have getting out of it because they can rationalize better.
Yeah, intelligent people are good at rationalizing, and they use that against themselves, and they can convince themselves of things, i.e., lie to themselves convincingly.
Of course.
Yeah. And the more intelligent you are, the more you can make that sound really good. You can make anything sound good, especially if you're articulate.
Yeah. I have a theory about shame and where it stems from or how it gets passed on generationally. You can call it ancestral trauma or generational curse. A lot of families are all linked to wars. And these wars really brought a lot of negative behaviors after coming back home and coping with alcohol and being conflicted by having all the churches everywhere talking about good behaviors, and you realize you've done terrible things and you're forced to live a certain way. And that brutal reality is not processed very well. Definitely not in a healthy way for most people. And that gets passed on through abusive behaviors.
Well, see, that makes a lot of sense because people with post-traumatic stress from wars will have mental illness and not be balanced individuals and therefore would not parent as effectively. Not to mention, if you have the idea of being proud of war, then you see the enemy of your war as an evil person. And so you could relate that to your kids as well. Some people are just evil, and so they can, if the way you see others is the way you see yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
You'd have to see them as evil to justify killing them.
You'd have to see them as not human.
Yeah. And then you realize that person has a family just like you do, and the governments and the people in control that are profiting off of other people doing things like that. It's good business. Very good business.
Yeah, war does seem to be tied to our market system.
Yeah, it's interesting. One can be swayed into that, but anything for the kids, right? Protect your country, protect your people.
Well, now we're just talking about rationalizing again. You can rationalize any behavior if you say it's for children, or it's for the highest good, or it's for protecting.
Yeah, it's for freedom.
Yeah, yeah. It's the song of like, rallies,
It's heavy.
mob
Yeah, it works,
consciousness.
and it works.
It works really well.
Yeah, propaganda is good at
Yeah.
injecting that into society.
If you study history at all, you can see that history just repeats and repeats and repeats. We do the same thing over and over again. And so you can understand human behavior, why we do what we do, and the impulses we have.
Yeah.
At the very base nature, we like to feel tribalism. Well, like, my team's better than your team. Humans really only care about max 12 people.
Me and mine.
Yeah, so it's my tribe versus your tribe. Nowhere is that better illustrated than football. Yeah, why do we even like that? Because of our base nature, and that really speaks to why we go to war.
Yeah, sports.
Yeah, we love to see our
It's the same thing,
our
our
people
flag.
triumph over your people.
It's the fight of the flags.
It's tribalism. Yeah,
Bunch of flags.
it's in us.
Bunch of flags. Boundaries, borders. The tribalism. Man. As soon as you get out of the grip of shame, you're on your way to really creating the life you've always dreamt of.
Yeah, you can start being someone who grows.
Yeah.
And someone
Today,
who grows has a good experience with life.
Right now,
Yeah.
you could say, okay, these guys, I don't even believe it yet 100%, but I'm willing to take what they're saying into account, because it's the option. If you don't believe it, then you're right. And you get to stay in shame. Congratulations, that's what you're winning.
Yeah.
Or if you say, maybe I'm wrong, you get to leave shame. So what's the wrong about saying I'm wrong?
Well, one of the things that people get stuck in shame over is feeling really overwhelmed with accountability and responsibility. And they feel so overwhelmed that they would rather be a bad person than to start taking accountability and responsibility, because they find that to be super daunting, like holding the world on my shoulders. I'm responsible for everything. I'd rather just be a shameful evil person. They rationalize.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they don't know the higher levels of emotions and feelings of productivity. So they only have the feelings of, like, usually drugs and alcohol and sex and food.
Their joy.
So that's their highest joy that they've ever experienced. So they don't know that there's higher joys of accomplishment. You could tell them all day, it feels better than anything else, but they don't have a frame of reference.
And then
to
even
believe
past
it.
the accomplishments is just the peace that you have at a baseline level that is not dependent on external factors, where most people now are happy if things are a certain way.
Right.
If they have money in the bank, if their relationships are okay, if their kids are being all right, that kind of stuff.
People that have lived their whole lives in a state of shame don't have any concept of peace of mind. It's just words to them. It doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there is states of consciousness where you feel no frustration or lack, and you're
True
always
abundance.
Yeah. But if you've never experienced it, you don't have a frame of reference for it. Words are only little symbols for experiences that you've already had. That's why some words mean nothing to some people and some words mean quite a bit, depending on the experiences that you've had.
That's awesome. Shame. Now, they say fear is the opposite of love, but it kind of seems like shame is.
Well, it depends on what love you experienced.
Yeah.
Yeah. The opposite of love would be indifference.
But not neutrality.
Well, it depends on your definition of love.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love is extreme attachment and caring. Love and hate are basically the same thing. When you really hate something, you care deeply about it. So the opposite of caring deeply, it's not caring at all. Maybe apathy.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. But love is one of those words that means many different things to many different people. Great poets of our time have tried to capture love with their art, but it's very elusive because it depends on what you've experienced as to what it means to you. For some people, it just means pleasure. For other people, it means deep attractedness. And for other people still, it means like divine bliss. So depending on your experience, it's going to mean something different to you, and therefore it's going to have a different opposite.
Yeah, Sanskrit has like 20 different meanings for the word love.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those words that's almost shouldn't be used. because it means so many different things to different people. Kind of like the word God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess so when you tell random people that you love them, they're weirded out.
Yeah, because that means you, maybe to them, are sexually attracted to them. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, shame. Conquering shame is the first step. You know, if you've got hopes and dreams, something to aspire to, and you have this life that you envision, and you really know it could be, but you just are like, man, if I just didn't fucking suck this badly, then I could do all this stuff.
If the only thing you accomplish in your life is moving out of shame, you're gonna feel amazing. It's gonna change your world entirely. And you can go out from feeling like victimized to productive, and you can start to see things as happening for you, and you can start a path of personal development, which is always fulfilling.
And it goes as far as you want to take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if you take it a few steps, it's going to be rewarding.
Yeah. It's amazing. Shameless. So how does someone produce so much shameful behavior to the point where they don't even feel shame anymore? What's that about?
Oh, there's no shameful behavior. There's only guilty behavior. Yeah. Shame is a useless
So what's
emotion.
shameless?
Shameless is somebody who takes accountability for themselves.
I remember a long time ago, my mom asked me if I have no shame. And why am I shameless? But it did hurt. But I didn't know how to, like, have you no shame?
Yeah. She was saying, don't you feel guilty about your actions?
I guess she was saying, don't I hate myself for my actions?
Right, that's the verbiage she used. But she definitely shouldn't have used that verbiage. And she probably doesn't know the difference between shame and guilt.
Nobody does. I've never even heard it talked about anywhere. Not in school, not on the internet.
People get really loose and wild with words to the point where they don't mean anything anymore.
They don't mean
and they think
anything.
that makes them cool and hip, but it
No
really
cap,
just
bro.
degrades language.
No cap. No fucking cap.
Oh!
Isn't that what that means?
Yeah, truthful.
You really got some riz, bro.
On God.
On